Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, I wanted to touch upon a point that you made in the last episode that we didn't have enough time for me to dive into. So I want to use this episode as a whole to jump into it. And that is the notion of there can be this mentality of, well, I've had my baptism, I've had my first communion, I've had my confirmation, I'm good. And then we don't ever revisit why we did these, the gifts that we got from the Holy Spirit, etc. And it's really to our detriment having the mentality thought of, hey, I did this, now I'm done. I don't got to worry about it again. It's also very contrary to what we see in the rest of our lives. But this is the solution to that mentality is continual conversion, reaffirmation with Jesus. And I wanted to use this episode here as an invitation and blueprint of how to grow in that practice.
Well, I think once we get the basics in place, Sunday Mass, I would say monthly confession, some form of daily prayer, some spiritual reading, and that's probably a good foundation. I would say daily prayer, 15 minutes at least to an hour. Some of that could be spiritual reading, trying to incorporate some silence into that. And once we get those basics in place, then it seems to me that it kind of takes on a life of its own. If you're regularly participating in a parish, the parish is offering different opportunities. I mentioned in the last episode, Immaculate Heart of Mary on Polish Hill, and there's special events there. And if you're looking for things, if you're paying attention, there are going to be opportunities that come up. The 40 days for life. You notice that a couple years, and then eventually you say, yeah, that's really important to me. I think praying to end abortion is really important. And all the political debates aside, praying and demonstrating the unborn babies are worth it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to give it a try. What am I going to do? Well, I'll go to the opening Mass at least. And then you go to the opening Mass, and well, that turns out to be a valuable experience. You meet some people there, and one of them invites you to a Bible study. And you go, oh, well, I think that would be really good for my faith if I did something a little bit additional and started going to this Bible study. But the point being, I think once you start pulling on a thread, if you have a desire for ongoing conversion and a desire for ongoing formation, and you pay attention, you have the basics and you pay attention, then things have a way of opening up, and you start pulling on a thread and you end up in places that you never quite expected. You start to make new friends, you start to experience new aspects of the faith, you start to make new discoveries, and the fact is that it's endless. There's an endless wealth to draw from. Nobody masters the scriptures. Nobody masters the catechism, and those are another good example of people who will integrate podcasts into their life. Certainly our podcast, but also, catechism in a year, the Bible in a year, are just great ways to expose oneself to the faith, to incorporate a daily practice of learning, listening, taking in, praying. Hallow has some wonderful programs. I do a weekly homily on Hallow, and Jeff Cavins does a daily reflection on Hallow, and there are just practices of prayer, things to listen to, rosaries, angelus, novenas, all kinds of things. So, but as you start paying attention, looking for it, wanting it, and then just kind of pulling on a thread, following a lead, then it leads us into all different kinds of areas. And the fact is that God is not a passive participant in this process. He is actively drawing us. He draws us in a way that never compromises our freedom. So he's not manipulative. He's not shaming and guilting. He's not yelling and demanding. But he has a way of tugging, of attracting, of opening a door, of inviting. And he is preparing things for us. He's preparing things for you right now. And just your, again, willingness, interest to follow those leads will continue to open up new things in your life.
Yeah, I can tell you that from the limited skill set I have in that department that it is true. It's part of why Father and Joe exist, because going out and practicing and growing in the faith does have tremendous rewards and benefits therein. And that calling that you gave there of regular prayer, regular time with the scriptures, really, for me at least, opens up even more questions and thoughts that go into it. You have the experience of what the Bible is actually telling you, and then that reflection, both in terms of what that actually happened and how it can be applicable to your life, and then taking the courage to actually apply it to your life, is to me the practice that has really grown. And it has added in my world an extra degree of paying attention, especially in the scripture space, of really trying to put myself in the situation of the people who were there. Don't have it be a passive listening experience, but try to figure out what are the emotions that aren't even said. What is the relationships like that Jesus is having with the people in this moment, or the apostles writing in their letters? What is it that they're trying to take away, and why? What was the need that they had to tell you this? Because all of the Gospels end with Jesus did these and many more things. I just wrote these down to help you believe. I think that's paraphrasing the end of John, actually. And with that being said, I think the looking as far as what is going on and how it's applicable to yourself is a tremendously beneficial habit. Also puts you in the habit of listening more thoroughly in everything, but especially in the world of the scriptures, and to an extension the homily during Mass. I think it is really a really beneficial practice, to reiterate what you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a great example. And I think really it would be better to ask you the question of how these things have happened, how this kind of process that I've laid out has applied to your life. But certainly I've seen that, just doing the daily things, having the good foundation, and then really paying attention and being willing to ask questions. And you're an inquisitive person. That's the other thing, is this is always going to follow a path of some of our own natural inclinations. God meets us on our own terms, and you're an inquisitive person. You are willing to take things at face value, but also question things at face value, and raise those questions. At some point, you reached out to me and you wanted to do something like this to share that journey, and that's gone from an event to a habit, and includes a lot of knowledge along the way, and you've incorporated that into your life. And so, yeah, if we just keep doing what we're doing, there's one of our professors says, what we do daily, we do dully, unless we do it more deeply. And that's the challenge for us, is to keep going deeper into all of these things, and really see where the Lord takes us in them.
Yeah, that notion of diving deeper is going to be what gives you the strength to not feel like, I did this once, I'm done. Because there's just so much more to it. I mean, one of the things that we talk about the most, we reflect upon the most, is obviously the Passion of Jesus. We talk about it all the time, not just on this show, but every Mass it's brought up. It's in the creed that Jesus died for us. He died under Pontius Pilate. It it's kind of always at the front of our mind, and obviously intentionally so. But even with that, and knowing that it's going to be the Gospel of John on Good Friday, and you probably have heard it for years, you know what the gist of the conversation is. There's people, they love Jesus in the beginning of the week, they turn on him, and they eventually end up killing him. I mean, we all kind of know the quick paraphrasing of it. But when you go in and deeper and look for more and look for bigger episodes that are there, I shared a couple of months ago, the transformation of whirlwind of emotions that the apostles had to have gone through, from being celebrated to then getting kicked out of town to being so afraid that we're not going back to save his best friend. And we're saving people that are strangers that mean a whole lot less to him from a personal level. You know, he's making blind people see, he's healing, and we're not going back to save his best friend. Well, what's he going to do? What does that mean about me? That thought has to come across at some point. And then after he brings Lazarus from the dead, we get a parade. And then we're a couple days later he's being trucked around to all these various courts and having public mockeries made about himself. So that whirlwind of 2 weeks going through it can really show why they were tired, why they were none of this feels real anymore. You know, we've all had moments where stuff is going so fast it's hard to catch, and unless you think about it that way, you want to catch it off the surface that's the state Peter was in. You know, out of reflex, it could have been, I will never deny you. But out of, just what's going on and fear, how it happens. And I think that those elements, and again, I use that example, it's the one that comes up all the time. Go to any passage in the Bible and you'll be able to see other elements. And to give you the final word, Father, I want to leave this on one last thought, especially about the scripture. You said a couple of years ago that when you read scriptures, you kind of notice that it will come back in upon itself and that the teachings just keep growing in depth. And looking for how it comes in upon itself and that experience, I think, is one of the things that will help you be able to go deeper and have a better relationship overall in this practice. But Father, as I said, we're coming upon the last couple of moments. I want to let you have the last word here.
Your demonstration of how you've steadily integrated the events of Holy Week and by participating in the liturgies is a great example. That might be another kind of advancement moment for someone who's not used to going to Holy Thursday, Good Friday, the Easter Vigil, maybe just usually goes to Easter Sunday, that you try to go to one of those liturgies next year. And then that opens up a new experience. And then you discover, why are people sticking around after Holy Thursday? Isn't this just like Mass? But it's like a little bit different. And we ended up at this, different altar. And then you kind of figure out about, oh, it's like the agony in the garden and you stay with Jesus for a bit. Wow, people do that. Oh, and sometimes people go around to different churches and pray in some different places. That's interesting. Just steadily following the things that open up there. And then scripturally, as you're pointing out, all these things are so interconnected. And we start to discover the Old Testament fulfilled in the New Testament. We see the interconnections in the New Testament. We hear the Passion narrative from John's Gospel on Good Friday, but we always hear the Passion narrative from one of the synoptics the Sunday before on Palm Sunday. Why are there differences? There's some things that show up in one that don't show up in another. And what does that mean? And then we notice that in church, and then we forget about it. And then the next year we notice it and we actually pay attention to it and we kind of look into it. And then we see what's happening there. And then we ask somebody about it. And then we, just steadily, as we participate in the church's prayer and in the liturgy and the Mass, as we pay attention to special opportunities that come up and keep being open to trying something new, and as we integrate those into habits in our lives, then we continue to move on a path of interior transformation, of ongoing conversion, and that's really what. Yeah, and it goes hand in hand. There are certain developmental things in our own lives. The other thing that happens is stuff happens. It's like
Mhm.
I wasn't all that interested, and then my mother became terminally ill, and now I'm paying attention to a lot of stuff I wasn't paying attention to before. Or I lost my job, and now I'm like floundering and trying to find solid ground and figuring out what my life means and where I'm going. Or I got betrayed by a friend, and now I'm trying to put things back together and understand how this happened and what this means and how God allows this. Or I see things in the news and they affect me. Gas prices start to skyrocket, and I start to wonder, like finances are going to plummet, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? We start to just living makes us ask questions. And then again, as we start to take those questions into our faith more and more, which is entirely what you've done in this podcast, and hopefully we've covered a lot of these different things, explored at least some of the thought space around them, and from a Catholic perspective, then it just kind of drives its own. If we continue to be curious, interested, and ready to explore, ask questions, discover, and then allow events to also become habits, then our lives are steadily conformed to Christ, and we become more truly Christians.
And at the end of the day, that's the goal of all of this. So we hope that this episode has helped you down that journey of continual conversion. And, the other part is you can come back to the old episodes. Many of you do. I've said this many times before. I don't think we actually got good until about 100. Part of that is we do one a week. The technology in 2017 then for podcasting versus the technology of now are not comparable. So we do thank you all for listening and being with us and going back into the archives. They are there for a reason. And if you're new to us on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment, as that's one of the ways in which you can directly connect with us, either with us responding written in that moment or bringing the title up in the next episode. So we thank you all for listening, and we will be with you again next week.